Data is being generated in ever greater amounts from vehicles. They're becoming sensing machines for the external environment as well as internally for passengers and the drivers. This rich trove of data is underutilized. There's a host of use cases that are only now being explored by stakeholders, from car makers and suppliers to startups and high-tech giants. Cities also want this data to improve traffic patterns and the quality of life. And not to be forgotten, insurers also have a big role to play in a future world of mobility. Data sharing is going to happen one way or the other. The only question is how. Do we use the existing legacy models of data sharing where large incumbents make deals amongst themselves, or will it be an open system of data sharing that gives a fair playing field for everyone? Existing legacy models are tedious, they take a long time to strike, and they're intransparent for most stakeholders. An open system sets out clear standards for data sharing that anyone can agree to, while reducing friction for data sharing to happen. And I think an open system is where we need to go. It's self-evidently better for everyone because the more data can flow, the faster we can roll out innovations across the entire spectrum of use cases. And I'm going to share with you a picture of the 4 building blocks needed to make this vision of open data sharing a reality. This open system allows every data provider to monetize and tokenize their data so that the data itself could be a sustainable business model. And once I explain how the data can be used more openly, can we then apply the tools of finance to that data? The opportunity is huge. McKinsey wrote in 2016 that car data monetization will be worth $450 to $750 billion by 2030. If this target is hit, this means a completely new set of Apple, Amazon, Google, and Facebook in the next decade just for car data sharing. And in this new open data sharing future, will it be existing car incumbents, high-tech platforms, or upstart startups who come onto the scene? So it's important also to think, why isn't data being shared today? Most obviously, there's no clear financial incentive to share data that exceeds the barriers and the blockages. Everyone knows that they can make money if they share, but something's missing or blocking. And pricing of the data is one of them. Pricing signals are non-existent or unreliable in an illiquid market, so a lack of data begets more of the same. Even if pricing is clear, there's a question of trust. What is the data being used for? Do I give up privacy? Am I giving up company secrets? Trust entails a bunch of aspects related to custody, access, usage for the provider, and things like data quality and provenance of the data for the consumer. Assuming the first 2 problems of price and trust are solved, the third barrier is process. How do I discover and negotiate the use of data that I want? That, in a nutshell, are some of the 3 big reasons why data isn't being shared: price discovery, trust, and the process. I once had a conversation with an EU parliamentarian, and he asked me, what's the one thing that could help kickstart a data economy? And I told him to have every CFO include, as part of their balance sheet for intangibles, an estimate for the value of their data. Think about it. Once every single company CFO has this number in hand, you can be sure that they're going to start asking questions about why the data isn't being better leveraged and used in some way or another. Maybe it triggers a change of mindset of hoarding towards sharing. And the building blocks to unlock the potential are 4 things. They're framing, financialization, infrastructure, and protocol. Just having a new asset class on your balance sheet isn't the only thing. We actually have to remove barriers to data sharing. It starts with framing. Is data an asset? If so, what kind of asset is the data? If you look to assets, you can think land, equity, company equity, intellectual property, or physical objects. And so where does data fit in? Clearly, it's not land, it's not company equity, it's also not a physical object, and therefore it's intellectual property. And what kind of intellectual property is it? Patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Those are the 4 we can choose from. And data is definitely not patent or a trademark, leaving either copyright or a trade secret. Which is it? Let's say it can be either a copyright or trade secret. It's one or the other or both. Framed this way, data is an asset that is intellectual property governed by laws on copyright and trade secrets, which is a good thing, because globally, laws on copyright and trade secrets are relatively harmonized. And if data is intellectual property, how can we handle it? There are a few precedents to explore. In 1985, the king of pop, Michael Jackson, bought the entire Beatles music collection of 251 songs for $47.5 million. One little fact that people don't know is that, ironically, it was Paul McCartney who taught Jackson the value of buying rights to music already beloved by the public. McCartney and Yoko Ono, they declined to buy the rights when it came up, and so Jackson swept in, and today that total collection is worth well over $1 billion. In the case of data, we're not here yet, obviously, there isn't a set of beloved data that everyone uses that's always fresh, it isn't stale, and which people are clamoring for. But it does go to the point of the idea of scarcity on rights to owning data. I mean, everyone can listen to music. You can have a copy on your iPhone, but for someone to have the privilege to earn a profit on the music, they need to own the rights. This is the scarcity that can be enforced. The good thing is that, as I said, laws for copyright and trade secrets are well established. And the anatomy of this construct is that each song can generate a revenue stream. Those songs can be bundled together to form a catalog and then sold off as a package. And in the future, the package could be recomposed with new songs or entirely new albums added, or songs and albums spun out separately into other catalogs. But the core concept is that there can only be one owner at one time. And let's leave this for a moment and then move on to another example. In 1997, David Pullman, right here in LA, he created the first celebrity bond, whereby artists could get paid upfront in exchange for investors to get a fixed interest coupon secured by rights to future royalties. And this first bond was created for David Bowie. It was an asset-backed security with 287 songs from 25 albums, and investors oversubscribed to the bond. $55 million was raised. In 10 years, the bonds paid out, making, I think, 12%, always on time, and Bowie then got his rights back. Since 1997, this type of financialization of music royalties has exploded, and Pullman is still at it. Many others are also in the game, including Goldman Sachs and a few private equity shops. So in summary, in some areas, such as music, intellectual property can already be bundled up as rights and sold off. They can be used as assets to back a bond security with royalties and rights to guarantee the payment. Data is intellectual property. Data is intellectual property that is waiting for pricing, trust, and process to be simplified enough so that it can start to be traded. And once data can be traded, tools of the financial system can be applied to create novel financial assets based on revenue streams generated. Now, the third piece is infrastructure. The first was data is intellectual property, and the laws around IP are pretty clear and well established. The second is intellectual property can be financialized. We have examples from music and other creative industries. It's rapidly growing. And the third piece is financial tools can now be deployed much, much faster than ever before seen on open public infrastructure that exists today. The public infrastructure is Ethereum. It's ready to be used. And let me take you through an example to illustrate how this works. The easiest way to think about this is to picture a hotel. When you check into a hotel, you get exclusive use of the hotel room, say room 888. And it's a single privilege that you control for the period that you've rented. This access privilege can be created using what we call an ERC721 token for a non-fungible asset in Ethereum. And the access token gives you sole privilege to access the room. Say that you have additional guests staying with you. You create 2 other key cards to access room 888. And these key cards wrap the primary rights of 721 so that those tokens are interchangeable. The key cards obviously are interchangeable. And you can have 10 key cards printed, giving access to room 888, but the sole control still resides with 721. The key cards are what we call fungible tokens, freely interchangeable with one another like a dollar bill. And here you'd use an ERC20 standard for fungible tokens in Ethereum. So let's take this example to the last abstraction. Say it's a family reunion and you booked all the rooms from 881 to 888. You got 8 rooms. You have your brothers and sisters, your aunts and uncles, cousins, other family all piled in. You made the booking for everybody. You're the master of ceremonies. And maybe you want to leave gifts for everybody in their rooms every day. Each room, of course, has 3 keys because there's 3 people staying in there. Those are ERC20 tokens. And to make things easier, though, the hotel gives you a key that is a master that accesses all 8 rooms. This is what we'd call a composable access token. And it's one of the newest standards in Ethereum, where it's a basket of both ERC721 plus ERC20 tokens. And there you have it. You have this kind of hierarchy of mixing and matching both the ownership rights to an asset, which is the room in this case, as well as access rights to the room, which your other family members can then use. And with this combination of 721 non-fungible tokens, ERC20 fungible tokens, and 998 composable tokens, you can create an infinite combination of access controls on top of an asset, including data. And going back to data for cars, assuming that every car has a 721 token, the car generates data, and the 721 is the owning token for all data generated from that vehicle for the entire life of the car. And that 721 token can now be sold off or kept by the original owner of the vehicle. Now, if you financialize the 721 token, the owner can choose to issue, let's say, 10 ERC20 tokens for usage rights. Say they give one to BMW, the OEM who manufactured the car, the mechanic shop, the city of Los Angeles, a few insurance providers, and other service providers who might want to see the driving behavior and the data that comes from that car. The ERC tokens, 20 tokens, are interchangeable, transferable, and sellable to various parties. And then you bring in somebody like David Pullman, who starts collecting these 721 tokens, as well as ERC20 tokens, and bundling them into data streams. That essentially is what we can do to financialize data streams. And let's say he does that for all the drivers in Los Angeles. He sells them off to the city of Los Angeles so that they can do better traffic management. The car data has been tokenized and monetized using the existing tools of finance on top of public, decentralized infrastructure and Ethereum. Where financialization comes in is that once this infrastructure is used towards data, you can sell the 721, the 20, and the 998 tokens depending on the pricing model that suits you or the consumer. This radical suggestion I'm making is that as soon as the data sharing problem with car data is solved, we will head rapidly to a point where you will have asset-backed bonds and lending based on data. You're going to have all the tools of finance that we currently have on top of data and for cars. And I think cars is going to be one of the very first. So there's a last piece that I think is missing, and it's that fundamental price, trust, and process to unlock the data, because we know we now have the right framing, intellectual property. We have the financial tools, and we have open public infrastructure, open standards to tokenize the data. The last piece is the pricing, trust, and the process to unlock the data. This is hard but solvable because not only does it require new technology, it requires a shift in mind from closed to open. And my team and I spent the last 6 years trying to crack this nut. We know that we have a reasonable first go to make it happen. The fourth piece is a protocol that implements access control on top of the data. And this access control allows the ERC721, the ERC20, and the ERC998 to actually function. The financial tools need to be based on access control. It's the key piece that governs whether or not data can be used and for under what conditions. And for access control to work, the data provider needs to be able to define the conditions of access that they feel comfortable with, and then rely on the access control to enforce the rules. And I believe that this access control protocol needs to be decentralized in order to scale globally. It needs to be completely trustless, not relying on any central party, using blockchain so that anyone can access it. It has to be censorship resistant, and most importantly, it can't be controlled by a single nation state or mega tech company. We hope that access layer is Ocean Protocol. Ocean Protocol has been in development since 2017, since our CTO, Trent McConaughey. Imagine what could happen if you combined AI, blockchain, and data, if you could merge them. And what we hope is the result is an elegant set of smart contracts that give data providers full flexibility in defining how consumers can start to access data and share data on their terms. At the heart of Ocean Protocol is what we call Service Execution Agreements, CEAs for short. Other terms we could have used would have been decentralized policy stores holding access policies for each data set. More common for today's world, you just call them service level agreements. Service level agreements for data and rights in access to data, as well as the obligations except machine readable. And these smart contracts govern access to the data sets, and the grease within is the Ocean token, which triggers the data sets, triggers the smart contracts, and can be used to pay for the services such as data, compute, and storage. And here, it's one of the last pieces, the technical pieces, not governance, not legal, not privacy, all that sort of stuff, but the last technical piece is the trustless protocol that allows data providers to start experimenting with sharing data on their own terms, using a defined process that is both transparent and auditable. Ocean can also be now deployed openly in the public or within a company for more private data sharing for experimentations. And you can also have it for use within consortiums like Mobi, where multiple parties are involved. So we're still at the early stages of the technology, but once Ocean is more mature and tested out, all the other pieces the infrastructure of Ethereum, the financialization tools that are now emerging for securitization, as well as the framing of data as intellectual property start to coalesce into a powerful architecture for monetization and tokenization of data. So someone once said, the car is the browser for the physical world. It's true. So many of our experiences with the world happen through the windshield of a car. Maybe it was getting driven around for soccer practice as a child. It could have been when you and your family first went to the Grand Canyon together. We might have had our first date just cruising around the city. In a new world, these experiences will still be with us, but how could these experiences change? Will the cars be safer so that you never, ever have to hear the words again, drive safely? Will it be more immersive with various modes that passengers can select, such as tourist mode, where historical details of each neighborhood or buildings are spoken out by an Alexa-like voice? Streaming through this new world is data. Data that is monetized and tokenized, just like the tools of finance have been used to make buying and selling homes, businesses, and products easier. The tools of finance can be used to make the buying and selling of data more profitable while building on open and transparent infrastructure. I'd like to see this vision turn into reality. I would like nothing more in the future to have a celebration for the Ballinger Bond, where automotive data has been financialized and sold. Thank you.